What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about Fuji Pro 400H. I almost messed that up there. We are going to be talking about Portra, but the star of the show today is Fuji Pro 400H. So historically, I haven't really been all about this film, especially, shooting it outside, landscape, that kind of stuff. Just never really was my preference. I always thought it has this little tint to it that just kind of bothered me. And no matter how much I mess with it, it just kind of never really gave me what I wanted. Well, recently, I actually used it for a portrait shoot, and it's kind of changing my entire thinking on Pro 400H. So before I tell you any more, let's look at some photos here real quick, because I think there's a stark difference here. So looking at these photos here on the screen, the top row is all one stock and the bottom row is all another stock. Between the two, I want you to guess right now before I proceed, which one of these is Pro 400H? Give you 3 seconds. All right, take your guess. So the actual one that is Pro 400H between these two is the bottom row. And this bottom row right here just blew me away when I first looked at it. The thing to mention here, and I think the differentiator, the thing that's making me value this film now, is that in these particular portraits here, we're shooting someone with very dark skin. Black skin, brown skin, heavily melanated skin, however you want to look at it. It is darker skin. And Pro 400H, based on this experience, and based on some things I've heard, seems to be the go-to film stock for photographing people with darker skin. So let's just kind of dive into this first. The top row is actually Portra 160, and I rated it at 160. I don't think I overexposed here, at least not intentionally. I'm sure things varied a little bit. None of this is scientific, so just, don't even bother commenting about the scientific aspect of it, because I'm not trying to keep things very scientific. I'm just going off of what we see here. But in those top three photos there, all Portra 160, I just don't think that his skin ever looks good. It makes his skin look very matte, a bit lifeless. It's almost as if blood isn't circulating through his face, and that's just obviously not true. And I kind of mess with the edits a little bit on each one there at the top just to kind of make things look a little different. But in none of them could I get that color to pop from his skin that I know was there. I was with him in real life. I know a lot of people with dark skin. Our skin really fucking shines, and there's some beautiful red hue to it that contributes to that overall complexion. If you look at the bottom set of images, it's just night and day difference from my point of view. If you look at his face, let's actually zoom into one right here. Let's pick this one. Look at his face. You see all of this really beautiful orangey red kind of life that's given to his skin in the highlights and in the midtones. That is unique to Pro 400H in my experience thus far. And it's consistent. I mean, you look at every photo that we have here. Let's highlight them all again. These three right here, these are all Pro 400H. If you look at these photos, every single one of them has a beautiful touch of life to the highlights around his face. And then in the midtones, the part that's not the brightest, but also isn't the deep shadow, that's where you really see the color. It's really beautiful orangey, brown, red, peachy almost look to it that I think is fantastic. And if we look at the portrait shots, which I'll pull up right here, they don't really have that at all. In this photo, I tried to bring it in myself, but as you can see, the orange here, let's zoom in on this photo specifically. As you can see, the little hints of orange get kind of overtaken by this lack of color. Let's say it's kind of like a greenish tint. Just doesn't look great. And you look at some of the other ones here. Here it looks pastel-y. That famous portrait pastel, I think shows up here, and it just doesn't look good. You see? And maybe one of you thinks you can edit these photos better to give you that look, but I don't know. So ultimately, I think there's a clear difference between what Portra can do with darker skin and what Pro 400H can do with darker skin. I truly think the 400H one looks fantastic. And because of this, I'm going to be using Pro 400H a lot more to try to see if this is consistent, and if it wasn't just a fluke, if it wasn't just I was mishandling the Portra when I developed it or something. I've used it a couple times already recording this now. Since recording this, there was a shoot already that I did with another person who had darker skin that I haven't scanned yet, so I don't know the results, but I'm going to keep testing this and see what the deal is. So, we obviously got to do some printing in the darkroom, which of course I did, because that's where you truly get to see, from my point of view, I feel like that's where you get the more objective view on what a film can actually do in terms of color. And obviously you manipulate color when you're doing printing, but you still have a more objective kind of foundation, at least from my point of view. So quick disclaimer, I printed my Pro 400H shot first, came out exactly like I wanted it to. The Portra 160 shot, I actually ran out of chemical. So on my last kind of batch of chemical, the last, 3 ounces that were left, I took my best guess at trying to nail the color based on the entire experimentation that I did. You can actually see here, these are all of the test prints that I did with the Portra. And none of those test prints yielded something that I thought looked great. Whereas with the 400H, did not take me all those test prints. So let's first show you the Portra one to kind of, give you something to reference, and then we'll hit you with the wow. This is the Portra shot. And again, I don't think this is the final print. I definitely would have tweaked it a bit more, especially in the magentas, which is what I didn't get to do as much, but I ran out of chemical, so try that next time. But ultimately, I just don't like how his skin looks. In this particular one, again, not a great print to begin with from a color perspective, but I worked it a lot and I still couldn't get something after doing literally 10 test strips. So that's that. And now, look at the Pro 400H. Look at that. That looks fantastic. Look at his skin. Look at his nose especially. That's what brown skin looks like. And obviously there's a lot of shades of brown skin. We come in all shapes, and not all shapes, but all shades. And in this particular one, he's got beautiful complexion and melanin in his nose there. I think that's where you can really see the color shine. Then of course with the lips and the gums, that's where you also see some of that beautiful skin shine. But ultimately, night and day between what the Pro 400H could do and what the Portra 160 can do. I'm assuming Portra 400 is probably very similar to the 160 in terms of its inability to capture melanin properly, but again, haven't tested that. So in an upcoming video, I'm going to do some more Pro 400H and show you what I think the results did and how well I think it showcased the melanated skin, dark skin. And we're going to keep testing this. And I have heard rumors of other film stocks that potentially are great for this as well. Ektar 100 being probably the big one that everybody has mentioned to me. So no one's really talking about this openly, like on YouTube or Instagram. No one's testing this. So I'm going to take it upon myself and be the scientist, quote unquote, here, because none of this is going to be scientific. All right, y'all, let me know what you think in the comments. Have you heard rumors about what film you think is better for darker skin? Do you think I'm shortchanging Portra? I know a lot of you love Portra and you're probably going to come at me, but whatever. I see what I see, and I'm going to keep testing it. And if there's a film that does justice to darker skin, then that's the film I'm going to promote. All right, y'all, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like it. And of course, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. To the next video, y'all. Peace.